Hello, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about the new movie, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, on Netflix. This is, once again, a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie called Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, if you've never seen the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies, the original from the 70s is a classic, and in my book, it's still one of the best horror movies ever made. I thought, when I saw it when I was younger, I thought it was terrifying. It was pretty groundbreaking in the way it was telling its story. A lot of horror movies tried to do the same kind of almost, it wasn't like documentary style, but a little bit. It had this kind of vibe. A lot of movies after that tried to do the same, and it didn't really work as well. Some movies tried to do it even before and didn't work as well. But Texas Chainsaw Massacre had just the right amount of like dark humor and kind of grittiness, where it felt a little bit like a documentary, almost like this could have really happened, with some just pure horror, you know. And the cool thing about the original is that it's not just like a gore fest. Okay, there's obviously very brutal stuff in that movie, but it's just the kind of mood of it and the eerie nature of what's going on, you know? So all this to say, you know, the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it's a classic, and it's a classic for a reason. It's a damn good movie. Really, really good and strong and scary horror movie as well. There's been a bunch of sequels, and most people don't like the sequels. Most people kind of dismiss the sequels as just crap. And okay, none of the sequels match the first one in terms of quality or just the fear factor of it. So Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 has Dennis Hopper in it, and it's kind of a, you know, it's got a similar mood to the first one initially, but then it goes off the rails like into borderline like comedy. Like the second movie is enjoyable. Like it's it's like if you took the first one and you just kind of trolled it a little bit. So it's a fun movie. The second one's a fun movie. The third movie, it's kind of getting back to basics a little bit, going back to kind of more the mood of the first one, and it's, you know, focusing on Leatherface, and it's not the best movie, but it's okay. I enjoyed watching it, and the fourth one goes back to kind of Texas Chainsaw 2, where it goes off the rails as well pretty quickly. I think Matthew McConaughey's in that one. I'm pretty sure Renée Zellweger was in that one as well. I enjoyed the fourth one. I found it fun as well. And then, of course, we got the reboot. We got the reboot with Jessica Biel, where the camera is mostly just focused on her butt the entire time. And the whole movie was awful. I really hated that remake. It's one of the remakes I hate the most, actually, out of all these kind of new horror remakes that we're getting. It tries to do something too slick and too like every shot is like these kind of like focus pulls and close-ups of stuff dripping and stuff like that. And there's a little bit of this in the original. I see what they're going for. Like the original does have shots of like these like weird hanging bones and stuff, but the way it's shot is just not, it's not like a film, you know, student who's just trying to show off, you know. It's not like a cinematography student who's just like, hey, here's what I can do. It's more like, in the original, it makes it look like if you're filming a documentary, you're going into someone's house and you're filming the weird stuff. That's what it feels like. Whereas in that remake, it just felt so artificial. You didn't buy it for a second. It kind of had the same vibe for me as the American version of The Ring, which was not like, although The Ring is a better movie. The Ring, it's not a bad movie, but it's kind of missing the raw, kind of almost realistic feel of the original Japanese film, right? Ringu is superior in every way than The Ring, and it's superior in every way because you don't feel like these actors are just like Hollywood people, you know? You don't feel like the camera person is just trying to really just like, you know, show off too much. It's just kind of very kind of, here's what's happening, and, you know, these poor people look miserable the whole time, and this bad stuff is happening to them. You kind of feel bad for them. And you don't feel bad for anyone in any of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies since the 2003 one. There's this kind of element of like subtlety that's kind of missing, So yeah, I didn't like the remake at all. I thought it was just really kind of overblown and like it's super overrated. Actually, it doesn't even look that great. Like there's some nice looking shots in there, but again, it's all like way too many like fancy close ups and oh look what I can do. Just make the movie good. That's all. And also everything looks gray and like desaturated, and it's just like, why can't you just like make the movie good? That's all I wanted. There was one called The Beginning, which was, didn't really like that one that much. Then you had Texas Chainsaw 3D, which was hilarious. I saw that in theaters, and I was just sitting there going like, what the hell am I watching? It was pretty bad. But the fact that they were trying to like use the kind of 3D, in your face kind of thing, it made it fun. It made it kind of fun because they weren't taking this movie that seriously, honestly. So that movie kind of got a pass a little bit, like the fourth Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie got a pass, But that one was better. The old one was better. And then you had, I think, another one. I don't even. I kind of gave up. Obviously, clearly, I gave up at that point. And now we have Texas Chainsaw Massacre again, except it's not. It's not a reboot. It is, but it's not a remake. It's a sequel. This takes place years after the first one, and it's kind of trying to do the Halloween, reboot slash sequel, requel, if you will. It's trying to do that, but with Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And this movie, spoilers ahead, okay? This movie, I had little hopes for that movie, but I was willing to give it a go. Just because I don't want to trash a movie without, even seeing it. So I sat there and I was watching this movie, and it struck me that this movie is not very good. It's not very good at all. And we'll get to that. But I like it better than the remake. I like it better than the remake because at least this movie is fun in its own kind of like very, very silly way. And it's kind of like, I would compare this movie not so much to the Halloween kind of requel, but to Halloween Kills, okay? I would say I enjoyed this movie more than Halloween Kills, but they're about on the same level. They're on the same level in terms of quality, I would say. Where you have this really silly sequel that doesn't make any sense at all, where all the characters are really, 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 really dumb, even for a horror movie, and the monster is not particularly scary because everyone around is acting so stupid. But Leatherface, comes off as a bit more intimidating in this movie than Michael Myers in Halloween Kills. But they're basically, if you liked Halloween Kills, you might actually like this movie. I didn't like Halloween Kills. You can see my review on the website, of course. But these movies are basically on the same level for me. But, Halloween, the requel, the 2018 movie, is a better movie than Halloween Kills. But it's not particularly good anyway. It's not particularly that much fun, though. At least Halloween Kills is so bad that you're actually entertained by what you're watching, and this is kind of the same deal. So Texas Chainsaw Massacre takes a different approach, right, than any of the other films before it. It's basically kind of like retelling the story very quickly, and then it's like many years later, it's the same kind of crappy southern town in the U.S., and you've got these teenagers show up to this kind of deserted neighborhood. And the whole idea is that they're gonna bring a party bus over there with all these like random people who are just gonna be like looking into kind of purchasing real estate, I guess, around there. And unfortunately, they find out that one of the houses, the main house that they want, there's already someone there. There's this old lady living there. And I thought, because they were kind of like showing the last girl, the girl who survived the first movie. They were showing her early on, making a point to say that, she survived and she's still alive, etc. I thought that was meant to be her, but it's actually Alice Craig is the actress. You'll probably remember her from playing the Borg Queen and the witch in Gretel and Hansel. She's awesome. She is really awesome. I like that she's just typecast as all that because she doesn't really look that weird in real life. She's just kind of like, she just likes playing these kinds of heavy makeup, kind of despicable looking roles, and she kind of nails it. But she's actually in the movie for a very, very short time, and that was the first thing that happened where I was like, that's a shame, because Alice Craig could have really nailed this movie down. Like, Alice Craig needed to be like the main character in this. She is basically like Leatherface's mother kind of thing. And I feel like she really needed to have like a bigger role. Because what you're left with is the teenagers, those 20-year-olds who are just like super, super annoying. You've got this girl with the curly hair who's kind of goofy in her own way, very whiny, very whiny. Then you've got her sister, who's this kind of emo kid who's even more whiny and annoying. Then you've got this blonde girl who is just kind of a dumb blonde girl, I guess. She doesn't really have a personality. And you've got the black dude who is the one who is meant to have the deed for this house, etc. And he's not having the best time initially because obviously, like, you've got like a Confederate flag hanging from that old house. The old lady, says the N-word at him. It's just kind of like this backwards place that he's in, and he's just kind of already like having enough. And I feel like, very, very early on, I was kind of having like, I kind of was getting into this character. I thought this guy had potential to be a character that you can kind of get behind. That you don't want to see him die at all, because you kind of feel for him. But he turns out to be kind of an asshole, and then you don't feel bad when bad stuff happens to him. But I feel like this movie had a potential to have some characters that we actually care about, that we actually like, and don't want to see bad stuff happen to them. And it had potential overall, like even the cast. You've got the girl from the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre playing a badass. Well, she's not sheriff, I don't think, but she's playing a badass. She's doing the Sarah Connor in Dark Fate kind of Terminator movie. She's doing that kind of. There's like a new trope of just kind of badass old ladies coming back for one more fight. And the funny thing about this trope is that it's always kind of super underwhelming when you actually see the movie. Like Terminator Dark Fate, like Sarah Connor kind of sucks in that movie. And Jamie Lee Curtis, and especially in Halloween Kills, kind of sucks in that movie too. She's barely in that movie, really. So it's always like a cool idea initially, and then it kind of falls flat, and it does here too. So you've got this potential that's kind of wasted, and then you've got Alice Krige, who basically has like maybe one or two scenes. Like she's really not in it. And then and all these characters who could have been interesting but just aren't. They're just fodder, And I'm not saying like the characters in the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie are all like fascinating characters and they're all like fully fleshed out. Well, they are, but in a different way, they think. But you still have Franklin. Franklin is like a horrible kind of character, but he is memorable. That is a memorable character. And there's still better characters though. You don't want to see bad stuff necessarily happen to them, even if they're kind of jerks. They just feel like normal teenagers. Whereas here, the dialogue is so forced, and their characters are just kind of, they've got all these like annoying personality traits just shoehorned in there as much as possible. That they've got like one-liners. They're just so unbelievable. They're such movie characters, and the characters in the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre just felt more real, and that's what you want, So already you've got all this wasted potential, and the movie, I enjoyed the look of this movie more than the really kind of forced look of the 2003 remake. Visually, this movie is a lot more like it. Like it looks dustier and grittier, and it's got kind of like the right intentions, but it doesn't quite get there because it still feels way too artificial, way too forced, way too like the cinematography is just doesn't fit. Like it doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. Like it just feels like too much like a movie. And whenever those movies feel like movies, it doesn't come off as scary at all because the scares are really bad in this movie. In fact, I would say there's no scares in this movie. There's like maybe one bit where the camera pans to Leatherface, and the sound that they use for that is so freaking loud that you might get jump scared by that maybe. But apart from that, there's no good building of atmosphere. There's no building up of the scares. There's no eerie atmosphere at all. It just kind of feels very much like these actors on the movie set just messing about. And it's not. It's fun in its own way. It's fun because it's so freaking cheesy and bad. But it didn't need to be. And it kind of led me to thinking, like, what should this franchise do in order to survive? And I've come up with like 3 potential options. One, just go back to the style of the very first one, okay, and try to get maybe like a young filmmaker, like a young documentary maker, like find someone like a young Werner Herzog or something to make this horror movie, or do kind of like an alternative horror kind of thing. Number 2, just make it a comedy. Just go full Scream with it, or and then just kind of keep getting sillier and sillier, like the Nightmare on Elm Street kind of thing, where it's like, or like the Jason in space kind of deal, Leprechaun in space as well. Do something like that. Do something, or just let it go. Just leave it. Leave it. We're good. We're just good. Just re-release the original. I'm happy with that one. I really hate these movies. These movies they're like the 5th movie in the franchise, but they call themselves by the same title of the first movie. Like, it's just annoying. Like, there's no reason for it at this point, especially since you already have the remake that is called that. It makes sense for the remake to be called Texas Chainsaw Massacre because it's a freaking remake. What if they made another Psycho movie and they call it Psycho? Then it's just, and it's like the follow-up to Psycho 4. Actually, there's 4 Psycho movies. It's like Psycho 5, but they call it Psycho. But you also have the remake called Psycho. It's just like, bro. But back to the movie itself. What ends up happening, okay, is Alice Craig, the lady who lives in that house, ends up dying just out of nowhere. Out of the stress, I guess, of getting kicked out of the house because she wasn't meant to be there. Even though she had the deed. But she dies. And then obviously Leatherface is going to come after the teenagers, right? So first he comes after the blonde lady who promptly dies and in a horrible way. And then he goes after the others, okay? He really wants the girl with curly hair, the curly hair girl. But it's a bit of a struggle. He gets all the others, though. Like, he goes one after the other kind of thing. The worst scene in this movie... And there's a bunch of bad scenes, actually. Well, I don't know if I can say that's the worst scene. No, it is. It is. Yeah, it is. So the party bus that I mentioned before is this big bus that shows up to the location, and you've got all these people partying inside, okay? And it's a really long bus. So the front of the bus is just a normal bus. Then there's like a curtains, and then there's like a party bus at the back, okay? So there's this lady in it who is a friend of the teenagers, the main kids in it. And she sees that Leatherface is walking towards the bus. Okay? And instead of closing the doors of the bus and just driving off as fast as she can, she gets scared and she starts walking back at the back of the bus. That killed me. Just the pure kind of instinct of that. She knows how to open and close the doors of the bus as well. Like, she's done it before in this movie. But no, she's just kind of like sees Leatherface heading towards the bus, and she's just like, oh, I'm just going to walk backwards. Obviously, that doesn't work out well because now Leatherface is on the bus. So she goes to the back of the bus. She doesn't even tell everybody what's going on. She's like, run. She tells them to run. I'm not even kidding. She goes to the back of the bus, which now there's the only thing, in the way of them and Leatherface is a curtain. So she's like, run. But she's not even panicked when she says it because she's so terrified. She's just like, run. And then no one hears it. And then Leatherface shows up and just mows everybody down. And meanwhile, that girl, who was acting like pretty, smart up to that point, up to the point where she lets Leatherface onto the freaking bus, she starts tapping on the back of the windows for ages, for like the whole scene. And then later on in the scene, she just opens up a window and starts crawling out of it. I'm like, why didn't you all do that when you had the chance? Oh my God. And she gets sliced in half. Because obviously, very, very bad. Like, oh my God, it is the worst scene in this movie. I'm remembering things about it now. I remember when Leatherface shows up to the party bus and everybody sees him, they start taking out their phones. And oh my God, the dialogue is just mind-blowing. There's like one dude who's like, don't say anything or you're canceled. It was just like, what? They're trying to have all this. I don't know if this movie is meant to be a critique of millennials. I guess the person making this movie wants to see them chainsawed to death. Seems a little bit harsh. Just a little bit harsh. Yeah, it's just kind of, there's a weird vibe to this movie. It just feels like every kid is just like portrayed as just kind of having like no instincts whatsoever. But yeah, so the characters are awful. I just hated all of them. And at the end, you're left with the two sisters, okay? And the two sisters kind of take on Leatherface, and it's super cringe. It's really cringe because there's no way these two would still be alive because they're just dumb as a pile of bricks, okay? And one of the sisters gets the chainsaw. Okay, somehow she manages to get the chainsaw, and instead of just attacking Leatherface, like just cut him in half or something, she like, I don't know what she does. She does this, and like he goes doof, and then he falls into a pool of water. Like she like punches him with the chainsaw. Like she just kind of grazes him, and then they walk away. And everything's okay. Now, I will say this. The final shot of the film is good. I'll say this about this movie. The final shot of the film is well done. That is well done. They should have definitely ended with that shot. Okay? It ends with a punch. I liked it. I genuinely liked it. Not even in like, this is so bad. I mean, it's still kind of bad. But I liked it genuinely. Okay? Just because it was a cool idea. It was a cool idea. But everything leading up to that is just so freaking bad. The badass old lady gets taken out in the funniest way possible. And you know what? Like the first 20 minutes of this movie, boring as hell. Really, really boring. And then it's kind of terrible for a long time. Okay? But the last half hour is where things get very, very silly. Very dumb. I was laughing for pretty much like almost the full second half of this movie, honestly. And that's kind of like what was going on with Halloween Kills. I was laughing for most of that movie. And you're not meant to laugh at that movie. But in this movie, I was laughing a lot. Because you've got Leatherface doesn't just kind of like have his chainsaw and chainsaws people. He like throws his chainsaw around and he's like doing all sorts of weird shit with the chainsaw. And then people in this movie keep getting chainsawed, and then they're like doing shit afterwards. What's that about? Like you would just get sawed in half, and then they're dead, and then like a scene later they go, you have to go to the amusement park. It's like, no, they don't say that, but like they just like have like one last line, or they have one last thing to say, or they get up, they flat out get up and do shit. I'm like, no, you're chainsawed. It's done. You're bye. You're not in the movie anymore. That's how it should work. I mean, okay, You do this once. It's a horror movie, cliche. You do this once, forgivable, okay? But every character in this movie does that. The black dude does that. Leatherface does that, of course. The badass old lady does that. The badass old lady's death is the funniest. Well, it's not the funniest scene, but it is very funny. She gets owned so much in this movie, and it's kind of like, these old badass old lady movies. They always like present the old lady as such a badass at the beginning, and then by the end, it's just kind of they're just kind of laughable. Like Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween Kills spends the whole movie in bed, in a hospital bed. She's just like awful. And then and then the badass old lady in this movie, she's like she gets the chance to shoot Leatherface, and she's like, "Do you remember me? Huh? Do you remember me?" And the Leatherface is just like, what? Like, I don't know you. Like, he doesn't say anything because he's Leatherface, but he just kind of walks away. So she gets owned. And then, not only that, she gets owned when she takes on Leatherface afterwards. Okay? She fights with Leatherface, and she gets freaking owned. She gets chainsawed and then thrown into garbage. Literally, garbage. I thought that was just a weird approach to bringing a character back, and this is how you treat them. Okay, interesting. But I guess she is, she's meant to be not that good of a person. She does use these two teenagers as bait. Although she does tell them to leave, but they're too dumb to do that properly anyway. Yeah, wow. There's a lot. I'm not even giving you like 1% of the dumb stuff that happens in this movie. Okay, this is just kind of like a trailer for what you're about to receive. It's a bad movie. There's no two ways about it. This is a bad movie. It's not even in the same league as the original, or I would say the original or the sequels. Honestly, like this is on a par with Halloween Kills. It's on a par with Texas Chainsaw 3D. So if you enjoyed those two movies, you will find some stuff to enjoy here. But this is not a good movie. This is a bad movie. It's a bad sequel. It's not really capturing the vibe that it should have captured. It tries here and there with visuals, but it doesn't get there. So yeah, bad movie. I don't know why it exists. I don't know why at this point we're still trying to revive this franchise in the same old way. I want to see something new from this franchise. I'll even take Rob Zombie's Texas Chainsaw Massacre at this point. I actually think like it would have made more sense if Rob Zombie took on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies rather than the Halloween movies. I feel like his style would have matched the Chainsaw movies like a lot better. I don't know why the hell he thought he could take on Halloween. That was weird. But so I would say don't watch it unless you enjoy watching bad movies and making fun of them. Okay, so if you want to see a good Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies, do not watch this movie. Do not watch it. Or if you want to watch a good horror movie, do not watch this movie at all. Watch the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Make your way through the sequels one by one. You might be surprised at how much you enjoy them, but then stop. At the remake, stop. Do not even go past that, okay? So thank you for watching. I will be back with another horror movie review very soon on this website.